Good morning, everyone. My name is Imran Ahmed. I'm Chief Executive of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. It's an honour to welcome you here today for the Global Summit to address online harms and misinformation. And we're incredibly lucky today to be joined by some of the leading minds on tech reform, on accountability, governance and regulation here in the Cosmos Club. It's been a long journey here. 2 years at home. I haven't met any of you where I haven't secretly been wearing sweatpants on the bottom half and bunny slippers. But it's been an even longer journey for CCDH to where we are today. 6 years ago, in the summer of 2016, I was working for the campaign to keep the United Kingdom in the European Union when my colleague Jo Cox MP, a mother of two, was murdered on a street in Northern England by a man screaming white supremacist internet slogans. Her murderer believed in the conspiracy theory, spread widely online during that referendum, that the EU was encouraging Muslims to emigrate to the UK so that they would rape white girls and destroy the white race. That's why I'm here today. It's what gets me up in the morning. I saw where the threat was coming from, and I wanted to be part of the solution. And all of us here in this room and on the live stream, and there are hundreds of people who've signed up for this live stream today, are part of the solution too. Because we can see where threats are being fomented. Social media is an increasingly important place where our world is in part being re-socialized. It is becoming the primary locus where information is shared, where social mores, the norms of attitude and behavior, are set, where values, even the corpus of ideas that we call facts, are negotiated. We learned and evidenced at the CCDH how bad actors are spreading lies and how lies and hate have the advantage in social media spaces. It is their milieu. It's a place where there are few consequences for malignant behavior, a place where hate, controversy and disinformation are given algorithmic advantage, sort of algorithmically amplified race to the bottom in discourse and values and mores. The pandemic has accelerated these trends, and as we've seen with the anti-vax delusion that infects our societies, it's evidenced the potential harms of social media very clearly. Now look, last Saturday, 10 people were murdered in Buffalo, New York, by a terrorist who was radicalized online into violent white supremacy. We know he was because he's told us explicitly his pathway. He used a digital playbook that post-Christchurch has become depressingly familiar, and it should never have become familiar. He live-streamed footage of the attack. He posted a manifesto that cited a version of the very same great replacement theory that took my colleague Joe's life and has grown, evolved dynamically, syncretically since then, because it's been given space to breathe. Three years ago, Meta, Twitter, and Google committed to uphold the Christchurch call to eliminate terrorist and violent extremist content online. They stated that they would be resolute in their commitment to ensure they're doing all they can to fight the hatred and extremism that lead to terrorist violence. But 3 years later, when we conducted a study that came out a few weeks ago, our last platform audit, we found that even when we report posts advocating the great replacement theory to platforms using their own platform safety tools, they fail to take action in our study 9 out of 10 times. All they can, it's not even the bare minimum. The failure of social media companies to act on known racist content connected with terrorism is a violation of not only their own terms and conditions, but also the pledges made to the international community while the cameras were rolling, and the inherent dignity that the victims of Buffalo are entitled to. We talk a lot about rights in this debate, but what about the right to live safely in your communities, to be safe from extremist, racist terrorism? Words, conspiracies, and misinformation can kill. Big tech knows this to be true. They've acknowledged it. We all know this to be true. And yet they still are failing to act responsibly. This has had, as our panels will discuss today, real-life consequences. Now look, misinformation, identity-based hate, malignant use of digital spaces, they're not unique to any one country. The future of online harm and misinformation is a global story which will require global collaboration. That's why we've invited regulators, members of parliament, members of Congress, academics, civil society, whistleblowers and activists from around the world to shine a light not only on the harms we're witnessing, but also the solutions that are possible. Reform and policy efforts that are being pioneered in jurisdictions around the world. I get told a lot that when I give speeches about the problems, the harms, people walk away terrified. But they shouldn't be terrified because change is coming. We're joined by officials and legislators from the United Kingdom, where I come from, Europe, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, to hear about their own efforts to address the problems at hand. We will also be joined by Representative Laurie Trahan, who will discuss her own model of the Digital Services Act for the United States. Our first panel today will dive into the tactics, strategies, and weaponization of social media by bad actors. Our head of research, Callum Hood, will discuss with Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Ressa the harms she's witnessed in the Philippines and the Global South. We'll talk about the rise of extremism and hate in the United States with Cynthia Miller-Idris, and the dangerous proliferation of anti-vax conspiracies and misinformation that have taken more lives in the last 2 years than either domestic or Islamist terrorists have in the last decade in the United States, with my friend Dr. Jennifer Nuzzo. We'll then hear from Laura Bates on digital misogyny, incels, and the manosphere, the threat it poses to women. Our second panel will discuss the way platforms enable the spread of hate and misinformation, chaired by the leaders of the Change the Terms Coalition, Dr. Heidi Berwick and Jessica Gonzalez, and joined by leading voices in civil society, Facebook whistleblower Sophie Zhang and the brilliant Dr. Marianne Franks. And finally, we'll turn to the solutions in our last panel with regulators, representatives, and officials from all around the world. We welcome all of you and thank you for being here. Look, our goal is to build a collective understanding of the need for intervention and change and to develop a roadmap for a way forward for all of us as a global community. That can only be achieved through a strong civil society in conversation and collaboration with governments, regulators, and the public. CCDH will talk about our own framework for change at this conference, because we recognize the need to ensure that there are consistent standards, goals, situation analyses, and alignment across the globe on this issue. We have 4 standards that comprise our STAR framework, which is S, safety by design, T, transparency of algorithms, enforcement of platform rules, and economics, the advertising that underpins this all. A, accountability to democratic or judicial institutions, and R, responsibility to be borne by platforms and their senior executives for some of the harms that they produce, to disincentivize their production. In closing, I want to thank you all for turning up today, here in person in Washington, DC, and on our global live stream, which is truly global. We have people signed up from every continent except Antarctica. And I'm sure the team are working on that. And let me pay tribute to my team. 2.5 years ago, CCDH launched publicly. Since then, we've grown to an organization that has offices in London and Washington, DC. We've gone from 2 to 22 people. Today, this event has been put together by our new head of policy, Eva Hartshorn-Sanders, who came to us from New Zealand, where she's been working with the government on policy post-Christchurch, and she's leading our efforts in Washington, DC, to try and build that alignment that we need. Thank you so much to every member of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate family and our friends as well who've elevated us and helped us to get here today. Now please join me in welcoming our first panel to the stage.